You're borderline hypothermic the entire time. Toes froze, completely froze. We were within 2 meters of hitting the propeller. This is a suicide mission. Nowhere else in the world has impacted me as much as Antarctica. I remember at that time having a pain actually in my chest, but not knowing what it was. COVID saved my life. She listened to my heart. She didn't tell me at the time, and she could hear us instead of a boop, 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 boop. The murmur was so much, it was like a tap. They said I wouldn't live more than 6 months.
Hello, I'm Michael George from Sagesse Healthcare Consulting, and this is the Pioneering Patient Podcast in collaboration with Heart Valve Voice, the UK's dedicated heart valve charity. Now, my 43-year-old guest today is a 15-time world record holder as part of a team, as part of extreme rows across Antarctica and other areas. You need to be extremely fit to do this, but try and imagine doing this 5 months after you've just had heart valve surgery. That's the story today from our guest. It's Jamie Douglas Hamilton. Welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction.
Great to have you here. So, tell me more about you. We know that you're a rower, but what else? You're a proud Scot, you're an entrepreneur. Give me a 30-second potted biography.
Yeah, so my day job is very hard to actually balance the rowing with this piece. I founded an alkaline water company called Actiph, and so we make water, purify, add electrolytes, ionize it to high pH. But it started 7 years ago, and we're now in 32 countries. So that takes up a lot of time. And outside of that, we've done 3 big major rows from Australia to Africa, South America to Antarctica. It's the first crossing of Southern Ocean, first crossing of Drake Passage, and then from Antarctica to South Shetland Islands, which was 5 months afterwards.
So we're going to hear more about those, but I think, as I recall, you didn't intend to start out as a rower, you intended to be a runner, but it was a hamstring injury, was it, which turned you to rowing?
That's right, a very good memory. So I was a 400-metre runner, but I could do long distance cross country and sprinting, and so 400 was the ideal distance. And all I wanted to be, when I was younger, was have a chance to run for run for my country. And at that time, I was overtraining. I didn't realise it, and I pulled the shaft around my Achilles tendon, and there's very little blood that goes into the Achilles. And so I was out for 2 years, and then I went into university, and then into university life, and never really got back into it. But it was always a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I wish I had done this. And so you wanted to do something athletic or physical or sporting. So how did you then get into rowing? Then got into long distance running, Scottish Highlands Peaks race, a number of marathons, ultra marathons, and then got into coastal rowing, and just loved it, being able to go out in skiffs around the islands. I was living in North Berwick, just east of Edinburgh at the time. We did a lot of competitions, and that's when I heard about a Scot that was planning to row from Australia to Africa. And as soon as I heard, didn't care about the danger. I was like, sign me up.
So what was that like? It was 5,000 miles, is that right?
5,000 miles. It's incredibly rough ocean, Indian Ocean. And we were self-funded. We were let down by a sponsor at the start line. And so this delayed us quite a bit. So we left in the winter with the winter storms. We were hit by 3 major storms, one of which was a hurricane force. You're unsupported with just 6 people rowing. And you're rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off until you get to the other side. And unless you're in a storm, that's the only time you go to sea anchor. But you're drinking 9 to 13 litres of water every day. You're eating about 10,000 calories. So you're burning 10,000 calories, you eat about 6,000. So you're slowly starving as you go through. And all of us lost about 20 kilos on that row. We were like matchsticks by the end.
And you said you were unsupported, so you didn't have a support boat?
No.
Wow.
And we actually had to evacuate someone mid-ocean.
Really?
He went over in a force 10, huge waves that night, and we struggled to get him back on. When we did get him back to the boat, he was shaking uncontrollably, and he was desperate to get off. And when he realised it was going to take another 40 days or so to get to Africa. He was in the hatch one day in relatively good weather, and he got boiling water poured all over him. And when we gave him the option, do you want to get off? He wanted to get off straight away. And we were almost crushed by a supertanker who put a little rope ladder over the side. Of course, all that forward momentum of a supertanker goes, and it's just going from side to side in that swell. And so it's coming backwards and forwards 3 meters each time. And luckily, we kind of scraped away until we got to the stern. But all we could see was the engine, so the propeller still, coming, and the swell coming over the propeller. And we sucked back into it. And we were within 2 meters of hitting the propeller. And luckily, this whole stern went up ahead us on the bow. And we managed to, didn't crack the boat, and we managed to just get away. So it was a hairy old time. We got hit by a blue whale just after that too. So everything that could go wrong went wrong. So
and you've still done 2 rows since. So that's very great. So how long did it take you to finish the 5,000 miles?
So that was 57 days.
57 days. Wow. Yeah. And physically on you, that's really, really demanding, isn't it?
Yeah, and mentally too. Yeah. And it was. I mean, we got hit by a countercurrent towards the end, so we had to then do an extra shift, so 2 hours 40 on, hour and 20 off, for 6 days. I remember hallucinating to a point. I imagined the row in front of me in a laboratory changing a light bulb. I don't know why I imagined that. And then I was shouting him, "Why are you changing your light bulb?" And there was waves coming over the entire deck, and I'd stopped rowing. I just zoned out. So visual, that hallucination, my brain couldn't make sense of what was real and what wasn't.
Because you talk about 2 hours 40 on, 1 hour 20 off. You're rowing 2/3 of the time.
Yeah,
you never get rest. I mean, it's
Yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah. But you broke how many world records on this row?
So that was two world records.
Yeah,
that was the fastest row in the Indian Ocean, and the longest row in the Indian Ocean. Yeah. And that was the start of it. And came back and thought, never want to see a rowing boat ever again. And for some reason, your brain can't remember pain. Yeah. And then so when another row came up years later, I'd forgotten all about it until I was back in the cabin again with that smell of Sudocrem, sweat, and everything else. And I was like, what have I done?
Yeah, it's a bit like childbirth, but a little bit different. So the one in, was it 2019? It was covered by the Discovery Channel, called The Impossible Row. Why was it considered impossible?
So the Southern Ocean's the roughest ocean in the world, and you've got a current that goes from west to east around Antarctica. And it's the only fully looped current in the world. We're going from north to south, but it's where these oceans meet. It's where the Pacific and the Atlantic meet with this incredibly strong current, which is then compressed because the 2 landmasses come out, the bottom of Chile and the Antarctic Peninsula. So all that energy is compressed, and that's why you get the most ferocious storms anywhere in the world. When Sir Francis Drake first went through, he was hit by hurricane force winds for 52 days going down there. And he lost one of his ships. His other ship turned back home. But you've had more ships have gone down in that area than anywhere else in the world. And just actually 2 days before we left, when we were going through the Beagle Channel to Cape Horn, a Hercules, so 4-propelled Hercules that can deliver tanks to war zones, got taken down by a Category 3 hurricane in the Drake Passage, taken out the sky. All 38 people lost their lives. So we were boarded by the Chilean Navy and said, this is a suicide mission. There's absolutely no way you're going to go. And we're like, it's fine, don't worry. They saw our boat, which about, it was only 20-25 feet. They thought we were utterly mad.
And were you?
I kind of realised when we were right there, they did have a point. When we got hit by our first storm, that just came up from the Antarctic ice shelf, -12 wind chill factor at that time. And just you're rowing across 30, 40-foot waves, countercurrents. You capsized about 90 times during that time.
So you have to practice what you do when you capsize, don't you?
Yeah, and so the hull of the boat, the bottom hull, is filled up with water. So it means it's heavier than the top. So when you go over, you'll have self-righting. And the boat won't want to be upside down for long. And the thing is, the easiest thing when you get capsized is jump out. But you're still harnessed on. But don't hold on to safety lines, always in safety lines, and just count slowly to 10. And by about 5, it's usually up again.
Wow. But you're not only capsizing, but you're getting wet and you're staying wet 24 hours a day. I mean, how long was the impossible row for?
You're wet the entire time. You're borderline hypothermic the entire time. Water is such a small molecule, it will get in through everything. So even though we had tight neoprene, it would get in through those gaps the whole way down you. And of course that causes huge chafing. Because you're rowing, 12 hours a day, and that when it gets wet, it's one of, especially about salt water, it's one of the sorest feelings.
Yeah, and I recall that the tie on your boot wore through to almost your bone, did it?
That's right. Yeah. So we were wearing the survival suits, and boots that were really made for sailing. So on the back of these boots has got a quite an aggressive thread. But of course, if you're sailing, you're not moving much. When you're rowing, you're going up and down, and that had cut through the neoprene, cut through the sock, cut through my skin, cut through the tissue, and it was grating my bone. And I knew something serious happened because it wasn't sore, it was numb. And I was like, if something's numb, you can't feel anything, you've got a real problem. And I thought I could get all the way through. I thought I'd have one look. And I just saw this, and I thought this is bad. So I had to wear foul weather gear after that and trainers. Went outside the next shift at Sea Anchor. And this is on a force 9, at -20 to -25 wind chill, just before Antarctica. Toes froze, completely froze. I couldn't even my hands trying to get back into the cabin. You're having to open the hatches. You can hardly get in, and luckily they defrosted, and it was a condition called frost nip. So they didn't go frostbite. Frostbite's when it goes black and you lose it forever. But frost nip, you can come back, but it's the sorest feeling. I mean, the pain of when the blood goes in to your toes and your fingers is just this throbbing pain. Unless you're on painkillers, you can't sleep at night.
So one considers that you've almost killed by a cruiser ship last time. You've got waves like this. Your ankle is showing. Your bone on your ankle is showing. Why are you doing this?
Well, I don't know. When anyone that's been to Antarctica wants to go back to Antarctica. It's the scale of it. It's the beauty. It's how touched it is. It's absolutely packed with wildlife. We've got from orcas. And it's so different to anywhere else I've ever been. Nowhere else in the world has impacted me as much as Antarctica. Even though it is a very, very hostile environment, it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. And you always think about it afterwards. You dream about it a lot. The last 2 days were stunning. You're passing icebergs the size of towns, mountains that just come out, islands that come out like top of Himalayan peaks out of the ocean. And so many whales, dolphins, penguins. Penguins were all around our boats. And it's light at that time of year. It's light until you get to Antarctica. Never got dark.
Never got dark. Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so you achieved how many world records on this trip?
So that was 5. 3 of them were world first. First row to Antarctica. First across Southern Ocean, Drake Passage.
So you're picking up 7 world records already. Towards the end of this, you were feeling understandably fatigued, weren't you? How were you feeling towards the end of this?
Very much so. After that last storm, I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth that I had. What was working my mind was working, but coming out sounded like gobbledygook. I just couldn't. It was like an impediment. And I remember at that time having a pain actually in my chest, but not knowing what it was, but feeling so fatigued and drifting in that consciousness, and not knowing where I was. When you're kind of waking up
And so you got back home. You got back to Scotland with these world records, and then you continued your life. I think you got COVID, and you recovered from that, but you weren't feeling any better. In fact, you talk about was it a quadrathlon where you were falling asleep on the bicycle? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so when I came back, training just got harder. And I thought, maybe I'm getting older. Yeah. Maybe I can't do what I used to. Maybe I'm not that fit. Why am I not that fit? And I'll do circuit sessions that I could do relatively easily, not pushing it to any degree, but I was getting this overwhelming feeling to lie down halfway through and just lie down. I was like, why do I feel like this? I'm not, I'm drinking enough water. There's nothing for what I'm eating. And I just thought, I put it down to just getting older. I just couldn't understand it. And when I was doing a quadrathlon, that same feeling in the Drake Passage came up again. And that was when, so we swim across Loch Tay, you run up 7 rows, then a kayak, and then I was on the cycle at the end. It's about 9.5 hours, the whole thing. I kept on drifting in and out of consciousness on my bike. I was like, the same, kind of not sure exactly where I was, am I on the right road? And then finished. I was trying to speak after to people, and it was as if I was drunk, and my words couldn't come out. And I remember waking up in a tent after I finished, I just had to go to the tent, and I went to sleep. And I woke up the next day, and I couldn't turn my head like that. I had pain all the way down here, really bad pain in my heart, and all the way down here. And then so I hoped it was going to go, but the rest of the day I felt absolutely knackered. The next day I went to NHS. I was made to wait 5 hours, and then they did an ECG, and more or less told me I was fine. I've just done a quadrathlon, and I've got people in here very sick. And I was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah. But of course, a valve doesn't show up unless it's an echo. Yeah. And that's the problem. An ECG only does so much. Yeah. And there's a lot in ECG doesn't show.
Yeah. So how did it come that you were then diagnosed? Because you kept going back, didn't you? You thought you wanted antibiotics, as I recall, for COVID.
It was, COVID saved my life.
Yeah,
I had COVID really badly. I remember thinking, why am I getting this so badly? My fingers were tingling, and I just felt my chest throbbing. Yeah. And then it didn't really get that much better. I thought it was long COVID. I thought it was antibiotics, something I needed. Yeah. I went to the GP. And luckily, because I probably wouldn't have ever gone to GP otherwise. And she listened to my heart. She didn't tell me at the time. And she could hear us instead of a boop, 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 boop. The murmur was so much, it was like a tap. And so she referred me to a cardiologist. I got seen very quickly. She obviously thought it was serious. And then after a whole afternoon of tests, I was told that I've been born with a bicuspid valve. I had no idea what that is. And they said, your heart's 2.5 times the size. And I was like, really? And they were like, and you've got an enlarged aortic root, and you're going to need your aorta taken out. And the only way for this is a mechanical problem. You only need a mechanical solution to have open heart surgery. My first reaction was like, I don't think so. And they're like, no, you need this. I was like, it was so far removed from, and he was using these terms that I didn't fully understand. And I remember driving back home thinking they're wrong. They have to be wrong. This is surely a simpler solution. And I thought, what about if you just eat really healthily, go back, can you turn this around? Yeah. But with the heart, once it goes, there is nothing you can do, no nutrition you might prevent slight, but the end will, once you feel the symptoms, you've usually got about 3 years within that time frame. I actually felt the symptoms 2.5 years before, but I didn't realise what it was. And
you were in a really serious state, but also what you didn't know, because bicuspid valve it can be hereditary, that you have cardiac problems in your family. You didn't know that, did you, at the time?
No, and so then till I got back home and told Mum, who was in floods of tears, and told my dad, and my dad was like, oh, yeah, this all comes from your grandmother. I was like, I'm sorry? And he goes, oh yes, she wrote a letter, I said, what letter? I said, oh, it's about how 8 people from that side of the family had sudden heart attacks, and you all need to get your hearts checked out. I was like, oh, where is this letter? And he finds it in his filing cabinet, shows me. I'm like, well, thanks a lot, Dad. He's like, yes, I thought you'd want to see that. And I'm like, only a long time later. So it's a hereditary condition, and it's born with you from the womb. Some people can live all their lives. Some people, you know, it will develop quicker. I don't believe they know that they know why it happens with some earlier than others. But even the fittest people can still have it.
This is your case. And so you were already planning the next row, and that was 6 months ahead of you, or maybe less. You went to the surgeon. What did they say to you? What was their prognosis if you didn't have surgery there and then?
They said I wouldn't live more than 6 months, and by the time I had the operation, my surgeon said it would have been about 2 to 3 months. It developed quicker than expected. So my aorta was actually 7.5 centimetres. Anything over 5 centimetres, I think, can rupture at any time. And it was like a rugby ball, you know, inside side. And so it was working so, you know, harder and harder to pump blood around. I think it was like 45 or 46% regurgitation. What was going up was coming back down. Yeah. And just feel so lucky to have actually caught it.
Yeah, yeah. And so if it had ruptured or torn, you'd had internal bleeding and you could have been dead almost immediately. That was when you had no idea in this, and yet you'd just done a row shortly before. So tell me, you had a choice between a mechanical valve, which would mean you couldn't do the rows anymore, and a tissue valve. What were you told at the time? What were your options?
So the mechanical valve was the one that was recommended to me by the NHS, but I found out from other people that had that surgery that there are other options. There are other tissue valves where you don't have to be in warfarin. Yeah. And if you're playing active sport, or you fall over, if you're skiing, you can die from these blood thinners. And so to have a tissue valve, other options out there, made a huge difference.
And what was your experience of the surgery? Because you had other plans. What was your experience of the surgery and then the recovery?
It's a major operation. Everyone told me this beforehand. I was an optimist and thought, you know, will it be as bad, or will I recover quicker? I was under anaesthetic for 30 hours. The anaesthetic is one of the hardest things to get over, because you can be looking up at a light after you wake up and nothing's going through your head. Everything is going into recovery. And I had really bad pleurisy, actually, because it agitated the wall between the lungs. And pleurisy was so hard. I found it hard lying down, getting comfortable at all in the hospital beds. And I was dying to get out of hospital. And I got out after day 5. I was on the 6th day I was out. At home, it was no easier. And they wouldn't drain, you know, and it was, the first 2 weeks were really tough. But then after that, every week got better. And I made sure for the first 6 weeks to do as little as possible. And luckily, my sternum doesn't click. So some people that do too much, even opening doors or opening, you know, having a kettle for tea, that can cause clicking. You can never get over. So yeah, I took the first 6 weeks easy. And then after that, I had to start training. So I only had 5 months.
Yeah, exactly. So that must have been painful, mustn't it? What sort of training were you doing?
So to start with, I mean, even during that 6 weeks, I was starting to walk. I was walking a little bit further every single day. And then on the 7th week, I started to row. And the pain on the sternum was huge. And not just on the front, on the back too. Because obviously it's been expanded, so there's agitation there. And I could only row for 5 minutes, utterly exhausted, and I had to go to sleep afterwards. I felt terrible the next day. And then would go back and keep on doing it, and to get a little bit further every single day. But I really went through a lot of pain, discomfort to it. And so I just broke it down and said, okay, just do a little bit more, but do 2 sessions each day. Because I had you're rowing 90 minutes on in the Southern Ocean, you know, 5 months afterwards. So you have to force yourself. I knew by that stage the sternum was more or less fixed. I wasn't doing press-ups. I was trying to row, but it was tough. And then you build it up with weights. You build it up with circuits, but it was uncomfortable, and everything was forced. Nothing was. You wouldn't feel good after exercise. There was no endorphin high. You would feel utterly knackered. But I knew I had a very limited amount of time.
So some people would say, look, count me out this time. You know, it's too soon after open heart surgery, significant open heart surgery, but you didn't. Why is that?
Well, the problem is the support boat that we had booked in Antarctica, they get booked up 2 years in advance. And if we hadn't gone then, we'd have lost the row. So I would have either not done it when I was organising, so that was the problem. I would have loved to put it back just 1 month or 2 months. But I couldn't. And I think it was just under 5 months. It was 4 months and three weeks.
And there's something of responsibility to the team, because you must build up this fantastic bond and you just didn't want to let them down. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about it for planning it for 2 years. And it was a huge inconvenience, if I can say, but it's...
That's a good way to describe it, inconvenience, yeah.
And, but it was only really in the last, this is how tight it was, in the last week before I left, I could get back into doing all right times and feeling okay, but that's how close it was.
So you'd been told 5 months before you had 6 months to live, and then just short of 5 months later, you're on another road trying to break more world records.
Yeah, well, it's funny actually. I mean, it ended up being, in terms of records, so that set 3 world firsts, and we got eight Guinness World Records from the row. It was very, very cold, very tough, and a huge amount of pressure. But I was so glad to have done it once it was over.
And it was, you had to call it off early because of frostbite with members of the team. Is that right? Yeah.
So we had. It was super cold down there. Our dry suits didn't arrive in time, and that's was a serious issue. So we had kayaking suits. That was not great for Southern Ocean. That meant that 2 people got frostbite. It's actually part of their toes went black and chipped off, and part of their you can actually see the black in the tissue. They've kept all their digits, and they're all fine now. But it was even in the cabin. It's about 1 degree in the cabin, and just so much humidity. Outside, you're talking about towards the end, minus 15 to minus 20 wind chill factor. We lost someone because of seasickness and hypothermia, and it was getting very close. So we were going to go to South Georgia. We then rerouted to go to South Shetland Islands, which was actually ended up being the most beautiful place to have actually gone. And I'm not sure if anyone else would do that route, but it's the closer you get to Antarctica, the windier it is, and the colder it is.
And so you're doing this 5 months after surgery. How did you feel during that row? What was your health like? What was your ability to row like?
I was worried about it beforehand. I never missed a shift. I felt good. I knew I was doing things too soon, but I never had any fear at any stage that something bad would happen. And it was uncomfortable and it was unpleasant, but I never thought you would get a heart attack or anything else will happen. And when I came back, I got a check afterwards, and they said it's one of the highest oxygen levels they'd actually seen in the blood. Of course, you're outside the whole time, very clean air and rowing, so it kind of made sense.
So exercise helps your recovery?
Yeah, very much so. And it's hard because it can feel uncomfortable doing exercise. If I hadn't pushed myself through that, my recovery from the operation, let's say, would have been much longer.
So you come back for this row, you got 15 world records. Tell me more, because alongside this, you're running your own company, which you set up. Tell me more about Actiph, Actiph.
Yes, yeah. So so the PH is what makes people active, and it's a very exciting time. We're, from Tesco's to Sainsbury's, we're in WH Smith's, Holland Barrett, we're the #1 food and drink item. Holland Barrett, we're #1 now in Amazon, so we've overtaken the really big players. We're doing a lot more in Europe, Middle East. Things never stop. I mean, it almost takes over your life. But it's a very exciting time, especially with the health trends. They're going away from the carbonated, sugary drinks. Alcohol sales have seen the biggest decline, especially this year. And so it's a great time for healthy hydration.
Yeah. And what gave you that idea in the first place? It was from the row, wasn't it? One of the first row, I think.
It was. It was when we were rowing, we were drinking so much water, desalinated water, it was flushing the salts out of our body. And we were starting to hallucinate. And when you hallucinate, that's because you have very low sodium and electrolyte levels. And we felt like we couldn't go on after 2 weeks. And this is when one member of our crew mixed his seawater, whereas desalinated water, with seawater, about a quarter seawater. And we thought it was going to kill him. It didn't. Seawater is 3.5% salt solution. Your kidneys can process 2% salt solution. You dilute it to under 1%. In that environment, it's a phenomenal sports drink. So every second bottle was a quarter seawater. Straight away, you stopped dreaming about salty food. You had power, you stopped hallucinating. You had power right the way through a 2-hour session, even at night. And every second bottle was a quarter seawater. Our speed increased 15 miles a day. And that's how we broke the world records for the fastest row in an ocean, all down to hydration. And that led on to finding a way to make water healthier. And it was in Japan when I found ionized alkaline water that acts as an anti-inflammatory in the guts. It stops reflux by preventing the build-up of pepsin and hydrates faster. And I just couldn't believe no one had done this in Europe. And so we're still today the only alkaline ionized water in Europe. You've got 40 brands in America. You've got a lot more in Japan where it started. And we're kind of pioneering that healthy hydration category.
And so you set this up from scratch. You need a lot of bravery, madness, or perhaps, and skills. You must have had to have a whole range. You need to understand the product in the first place. You've got to manufacture it, you've got to bottle it, you've got to market it. What sort of skills are you bringing?
Well, I think the number one skill is to be naive, because the more you know, the more risk you see. And we were going into the world's most competitive beverage category. Soft drinks is more competitive, but within soft drinks, water is the most competitive category. I had no brand name. I had no idea how to make it. I had no idea where to make it. I had no route to market. I had no funding. I mean, everything was against us. Everything was stupid. I was like, well, get one step further. And by doing something that no one had ever done and gone into that water category, try to change people's perceptions to it, that you should value water. And it shouldn't be something you just drink and throw away. And so we went, and everything was going to race to the bottom. You had higher speed lines, everyone was lightweighting, put cheaper labels on. And we put in a nice bottle, made our own molds, made our own caps, premium design, and tried to encourage, inspire people to live active lives.
And so how's the company gone now? How many employees have you got?
So we got to 21 employees. We're now in 32 countries. And so we're the market leader in UK, Europe, and Middle East. We're doing a big push into the Asia Pacific from Australia up to China, South Korea, and Japan over the next 12 months.
Yeah, so when we last spoke, you talked about, as you said after your first row, you've given up those rows, you won't do them anymore, you're going to concentrate on your business. But I think you just told me that you've got another plan. You're never going to give up. What's your next plan?
Well, it's going to be to row continent to continent from Antarctica to Africa, first human-powered crossing. This will be the last one. I know I said this after the last one, but this will be. My girlfriend won't allow me to do another one. So, and that's planned for next year now. Roughest ocean, you're still going through the Scotia Sea, Southern Ocean. The storms that go through Drake Passage get compressed Drake Passage, but they carry on coming through the area that we're going to be rowing from. So it's going to be tough in those first two weeks especially, and then after that it's going to be a long, hard row. But I think it's just doable.
You can do it. So you're 43. You've been doing all these rows. Does your mum ever come to you saying, "Jamie, when are you going to settle down?"
All the time, all the time.
And what do you say?
I'm happy to settle down, but just one more, and then that's. But my girlfriend's very supportive. I think mothers never like these things until they see that it is then going to happen. They start getting more behind it.
So what do you see as a future for you? If you look 5 years ahead, you do your rows, what's the future? Where are you going to build an Actiph? Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years' time? Because you seem like a goal-oriented.
Well, it's. I mean, the big thing is certainly to have a family. That's the kind of. I wish in some ways I'd done it earlier, but these things, you've only got so much headspace, and I think you've got to be very singly focused to build a company from scratch in a competitive industry, and it just takes up a lot of headspace, and so that is that's definitely going to be a focus, and Actiph is getting, I think, that message of healthier hydration. In the UK, obesity, people living with obesity and people overweight is increasing. It's 63% now. And a large part of this is to do with carbonated soft drinks and sugar consumption, because you absorb those calories much quicker than you do from having a sugary food. And so that's why it's so much more. And so when Mexico overtook America at one stage, and with the rate of obesity, it's exactly when the rise of soft drinks overtook America per capita too. And so I think that's a very important message to try and get people to drink healthier hydration choices.
Excellent. So Jamie, thank you very much. So a last thought, turning back to you as a heart valve patient, which is you're only slightly. What advice would you be giving to someone who's perhaps not yourself, because you're quite extreme, let's put it that way, who wants to live an active life but they realise they've got a heart problem? What advice would you give to them?
Be optimistic. When I first heard the news, I was devastated for about 2 weeks, and then after that, you can live a life much better than you had before, because you'll be overcompensating, and you can back to normal. And it's actually a lot to look forward to. You're not giving up. You're actually can be fitter than you ever were, and you will probably feel like you've gone back 15 or 20 years in a time machine. So remain optimistic. Fantastic,
excellent. Jamie, thank you very much for joining the podcast. And so thanks to Jamie for joining us. You've heard it. Be optimistic. You can live an even better life after heart valve disease. So thank you for joining us. That brings us to the end of this podcast. If you've got ideas for future editions, please send them to me at the email at the end of the show. And otherwise, please remember to take good care of your health.